Gene Seroka, our port director, is here, colleagues, to report on item 4. We heard in our Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee yesterday how the tariffs are going to be impacting our port operations and the supply chain and goods movement. I'd like to ask Mr. Seroka to join us at the table.
And good morning, Mr. President, council members, members of the public, distinguished guests, and city staff. My name is Gene Seroka. I am the executive director at the Port of Los Angeles. What brings us here today for this update began with the last presidential election and the Trump administration declaring that China was supporting and enabling unfair trade practices, including but not limited to currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, and intellectual property resolutions that were not appropriate in the business arena. As that debate began to circle the world, we stated pretty quickly that we would support anything that would promote the competitiveness of American companies and the jobs that we so sorely wanted to put into great position here in the United States. But we warned of 3 things that could be possible outcomes of this ill-advised trade debate. One is that there would be consumer impact, mainly in rising prices. And to date, after 17 months of this trade debate, that has become true. Secondly, companies in the United States who will bear all costs of these tariffs as importers of record, with payments of tariff taxation going directly to the United States Department of Treasury, would absorb costs. If they would absorb costs at this rapid pace, that could impact hiring and expenditures on capital and business investment. And we see that that is true today as well. We also said, thirdly, that there would be an impact to shifting trade patterns, that if China was to be lessened in their global impact on world trade, that other countries would be looked at for sourcing of materials and finished goods. Unfortunately here for us, about half of the cargo that we import are parts and components that go into the U.S. manufacturing stream. And that is exactly the type of industry that this administration was trying to build up. And that has not gone well. The world who observes us at the Port of Los Angeles wondered how would Los Angeles respond to this. And I would say, with the great confidence and support of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, the Board of Harbor Commissioners, and this Los Angeles City Council, we have responded with purpose. For the 3rd consecutive fiscal year, we have set the all-time record for cargo movement at the Port of Los Angeles for our 112-year history. And we are poised to set for a 4th consecutive calendar year another all-time record that would place us at the highest cargo volume for a port in the Western Hemisphere of the world. But that is not without concern. For the first time in my memory in this industry, we are facing a 360-degree trade negotiation. We still have not finalized agreements with the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. That has not been approached by Congress yet. Talks with the European Union have been put on ice for almost a year and a month at this point in time. And what is in the media most days is our ongoing debate with China. If we look under the hood at what this great year represented for the Port of Los Angeles, you'll see that for every container we gain from new locations in Southeast and South Asia, we lose 2.5 containers from China. In addition, because of retaliatory tariffs and other policies, the American exporter has been harmed irreparably. 3 major industries, to be specific, our agricultural sector, our recyclables, and heavy machinery, including automobiles. The chart in front of you shows the dissipation of cargo based on these policies and where we're trying to make things up. Unfortunately, it's going to take 7 Vietnams to make up for the loss of cargo in China due to these policies. And the simple fact is that American companies doing business in China today earn more in revenue from their operations in the mainland than we spend on American exports to China as a whole. There are still other levers that could be pulled here in this ongoing tariff war that could make economic peril more concerning to all of us. We have to be very nimble in what we're trying to do. The outsized responsibility we have to help support, in our way, 1 in 9 jobs in Southern California, meaning 1 million people go to work every day with jobs related to our port, and the fact that the cargo that moves through our facilities reaches each and every one of our nation's 435 congressional districts means that this is a conversation of national significance. But with our deep understanding of world trade and the supply chain and our strong relationships, we have been able to garner support from emerging markets and countries that do want to do business with us here in Los Angeles. To complement that need of the 20 million folks here that go to the store like you and me every day buying goods, and the fact that our challenge to be competitive, which is the #1 topic we face today in our industry, to challenge us for the cargo that moves to the interior of the United States, is at play once again for the Port and City of Los Angeles. Overall, our strategy has been very succinct, focused on new customer acquisition, making our port easy to do business with, and a digitization strategy and plan that has developed a partnership with General Electric Transportation that has built and delivered the first ever port community system in the United States called the Port Optimizer. I believe that one of the more important reasons that we've been able to keep ahead of this rapid pace change is that we've been able, through technology and digitization, to see around corners and longer distances, to better prepare our workforce and our supply chain partners for what's coming our way and how to handle it better. The difficulty is the stress that this policy has placed on our workers and our companies will also be difficult to recover from in the future. We have simply seen more exports in a choppy fashion trying to come into the United States ahead of new tariff milestones, and a lessening of exports, widening the trade gap, which is counter to what this policy was originally designed to do. That puts financial and operational stress on the port, as well as its partners from the private sector, that must be rectified quickly. We have called for a negotiated settlement, one that actively addresses the needs of the supply chain while understanding, as former U.S. Trade Representative and Secretary of Commerce Mickey Cantor, who's a resident of metropolitan Los Angeles, states, rules-based trade are most important, and there are other remedies to follow through to make sure that we're all on an even playing field and we enhance the competitiveness of our city, our port, and our nation. And Councilman, with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Gene. Clearly, we're blessed to have you leading our port, America's Port Director, before you, colleagues. He's got the skill set, the knowledge, the ability to lead in these tough times. And when we talk about tariffs, clearly, as you heard from Gene, these tariffs clearly will have significant impacts on our local, regional, national economies. And what I see here is more so of a war on egos, not a trade war. These egos between these two international leaders are clearly going to impact our economies. And when our port takes a hit, our local economy and our regional economy take a hit. 1 in 9 jobs can be impacted in this region, 1 in 50 jobs throughout this country. So we also have to remind ourselves during these trade talks and the trade war, we as a port, we are truly the gateway to the Pacific Rim, and a loss of trade equates to a loss of jobs in our region. Also keep in mind what Gene told us yesterday. For every container we gain from other countries, we lose 2.5 containers from China during this trade war. So thank you, Mr. Seroka. I don't know if you have any questions, Mr. President, or not.
Mr. Kokorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Buscaino, for bringing Mr. Seroka before us to engage in this conversation. And we are blessed in Los Angeles to have a port director who is one of the leading national experts on international trade and how it affects shipping in our port system and commerce throughout our country. So we're really blessed to have you on the job and to have you here to engage in this conversation. I think the point that needs to be underlined here is what you said almost in passing, that there's 1 million people in Southern California whose job depends on the success of this port complex. and the trade that comes through it. 1 million people. And that's jobs directly relating to shipping, transportation, trucking, the logistics, all of that. But in addition to that, we have, do we not, one of the leading manufacturing centers in all of the United States of America here in Southern California, do we not?
That's right. In Los Angeles County, we employ approximately 390,000 workers in the manufacturing sector, the largest county in the United States.
So when certain people want to beat up on United States manufacturing and talk about manufacturing being dead because they want to stand for a photo op in front of a shuttered factory in Ohio, maybe they need to look at the manufacturing sector here in Southern California, which is robust, which employs, many, many people, and which is largely dependent, is it not, on international trade.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if we have, if tariffs are imposed, if we engage in a trade war with our Asian trading partners, not only does the port suffer, but the small manufacturers in Ms. Rodriguez's district and Ms. Martinez's district and in my district and in many of our other districts that are manufacturing, doing high-end manufacturing for parts that will be assembled someplace else, for example, those companies are going to be hurt and those jobs are going to be lost right here in Los Angeles. Isn't that right?
That is my belief as well.
Okay. So what would you recommend that the council do and that the people of Los Angeles do to take this discussion to an action item?
I made the comment to the committee yesterday in front of Council Members Bonin and Buscaino. During the last administration, we in the city of Los Angeles and even in our city departments had great relationships with the administration in Washington. That is very, very different today. We need to start knocking on doors together, amplifying this message from your level, from other elected positions levels, so we can get action at this point in time. Simply stated, our voice has fallen deaf.
Good. Mr. President, if I may, just one other area tangentially related, and relates to a discussion that we had in Ms. Martinez's committee yesterday. A few years ago, I believe I'm correct, that our leading, the leading export from the Port of Los Angeles was recyclables. Is that right? So
that's correct.
Plastics, paper, scrap metals, not manufactured items, but our trash, essentially. We were shipping out of the Port of Los Angeles, mostly to China. What has happened over the last few years with regard to that? How has that changed?
On that note, we mirrored the transportation of the recyclables nationwide. So we were not ahead of the curve or behind. We were following national trending. What has happened is that prior to the announcement of this tariff debate, which has escalated to the point we see it today, China put into place its green fence policy. And while the idea was very strong and supported by most in the international community, its intention was to clean up those recycled materials that were going over. So if you said you were shipping waste paper, there was to be nothing else in that shipment other than waste paper, no mixture of the other commodities that you just outlined. That has forced our recyclables community to find better ways to get into middle markets, such as recycled paper pulp. So we are seeing industries burgeoning and current members of industry widening their scope of what services and products they could afford. There will be a positive that comes out of this, but the difficulty is that transition, and coupled with the retaliatory tariffs, we're seeing the industry suffer in this interim period of time.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gene. Good job. Let's prepare to vote. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes,